Okay, so first I just wanted to talk very quickly about the short papers. I have about 10 of them left to grade. So the Professor Gardner gives TAs a deadline of October 23rd to put the grades in, but I expect that you guys will be getting your grades back much sooner than that. It's looking pretty good so far, so good job on those. And then I will start my review slideshow here. So, okay, here we go. If it'll load. Come on. Okay, we'll just do it like this. So, first I kind of want to talk about how to study. This class is different probably than a lot of college classes you've taken. If you're in the law major, this might not hold true for you. But this class is different in that it asks you to understand and apply ideas and information instead of memorizing things and then spitting it back. So how I like to study when I was in this class was I defined in my own words the concepts we've discussed. I put post-it note tabs in my readings and the loosely numbered readings to say like, okay, this section's about federalism. This section's about positive law. This section's about utilitarianism. And so during the exam, if I had a question about one of them, I could just flip right there and boom, there it was. And then I would say, someone said in the class today, you guys don't have access to old quizzes, so this might not be possible, but if you do have questions about your old quizzes, you can always come to office hours and I can access them. So go over your old quizzes and see what you missed and understand why you missed it. I would say that's a really important thing. Also, so when taking the exam, remember to take a deep breath. I know 4 short answer questions and 2 and 2 essays sounds like a lot to do in 45 minutes. This is not the standard length introduction, conclusion, 3-paragraph essay that you might be used to writing in other classes or from high school if you're a freshman. This is just going to be answer the question as best as you can with the words that you can. And if you were in the questions today after class, you might have heard Professor Gardner say, take the low-hanging fruit first. Do that for sure. And also Professor Gardner put time suggestions of how long to spend on each question on there, and I would definitely recommend sticking to that or trying your best to stick to that. Don't overthink the short answer questions too much either, I would say. Also, because this is an online exam and an online class in an increasingly online semester, I would say just make sure, obviously, that you have a good connection to Wi-Fi, or as good as one as you can get. Make sure your computer's charged or that it's on the charger. And also, I would say, especially with the essay questions, read the questions very carefully and make sure to answer the question that's actually being asked. I think sometimes, especially when we're under time pressure, we just try and put like everything we remember down on the paper, and that's not really what we need to do here. Just be specific about the question being asked, and once you feel that you've answered it, stop writing. So I wanted to go over all kind of the major concepts we've covered this far in the semester. I'm going to kind of go through this presentation and then questions. If you have a question during the presentation, feel free to speak up and interrupt, but also you can save them for the end if you'd like. And then feel free also to ask me to go over something again more thoroughly, or something that I haven't included here if you have a question about it. Please don't be shy, because I think this is a really good time to nail down anything you're confused about or you're a little unsure about. Also, just to let you guys know, I will have office hours for kind of last minute questions tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and I will send out a link to that as well as the recorded session of this review to you guys, to everyone, just so everyone can look back on it. So starting off very basically from the beginning of the semester, what is law? So law is a social practice that is put in place by people who want to exit the state of nature and develop a society governed by the rule of law. And it's part of the social contract between people in a society. I mean, I think this sounds basic, but it's really important to understand where law comes from. It comes from us. It comes from people, at least, unless I guess you believe in divine law. But it comes from the want to live in an organized society and the need to regulate society in a way that makes sense and is consistent and allows people to exit the uncertainty of the hypothetical state of nature. Oop, sorry about that. So moving on, there are 3 types of law we discussed this semester. So human law are laws made through human reasoning, which establishes social norms. And as Kelson says, they are coercive orders backed by sanction. So if you break a law, there is a consequence to that. And also, I would say this relates to legal positivism in that human law isn't necessarily immoral or moral. It is just the law, and human reasoning can be fallible. So we have to watch out for that. A second type of law we talked about was divine law that comes from the will of God, that can be understood and conceived from scriptures such as the Old and New Testament. So this is talking about, almost we would say even like the 10 Commandments would be divine laws, laws that we understand that God meant for us to follow. Especially in Christian societies, we would then look to the Bible to understand what divine laws God has given us. And then natural law. So law that exists within the state of nature. It comes from the philosophy that there are innate qualities in humans that tell us not to harm one another. So this is, the understanding that no matter what, even if we're not in a society that is regulated by laws, we have some things that we know just innately to be true. And one of them is that we, oh my gosh, should not harm each other. So one of the quiz questions that I think people had trouble with was about natural law, where one of the philosophers says that natural law still exists today between, I guess it would be a state of nature, between like nation states. And then we're moving on to the state of nature here. This refers to a conceptual time before society, government, or law existed, and before the social contract was enacted. I don't think many people actually believe the state of nature might have existed in like a real embodied way. As far as we know archaeologically, I can just say as a little aside from an anthro major here, people have from a very early stage organized themselves into a society with rules. But this is more of like a philosophical idea to say, what would happen if, what happened before this? Was it more of a Hobbesian nightmarish scenario, or more John Locke believing in natural law, and that although it was an uncertain time, we didn't actually want to hurt each other? And so then moving on to utilitarianism. So one of the founders was Jeremy Bentham, and this was a rejection of the natural law theory. So this was saying that humans aren't innately good. There isn't some quality that tells us like from birth that we can't harm one another and that we have to take care of one another. And this is in utilitarianism, this is comes the belief that law should create the greatest good for the greatest number, which sounds pretty good. And that, human reason, again, is fallible. So we have to make sure and strive to enact laws that actually take care of the most people in society. So then quickly going over Federalist 10 and our discussion of it. Based on its most basic level, this essay looks into the dangers of factions, especially in a system of government that allows for a majority of faction to form. So Madison was talking about democracy here, and instead wants a strong, large republic to protect against this. So then talking about constitutions and how they're formed. Constitutions are a document used to establish a government and define its powers. And it's establishing the structure of the government and its relationship to the people. And in Federalist 78, Hamilton says the Constitution is superior to his agent, which just means that like the ideas in the Constitution are more important than the person who actually wrote them down, and like their will to power. So we can see this, and we discussed this quite a bit in class too, about how Supreme Court justices interpret the Constitution, and originalism, which is talking about trying to put yourself in the frame of mind of the founders, which some people argue is impossible, but just trying to preserve the ideas of our Constitution and what the founders perhaps meant by it. So then we get into hierarchy of positive law, which might be one of the more complicated concepts we've talked about. So if people have questions about this, feel free to ask. This just says that laws made by each actor have to be within the scope of authority granted to it by the superior form of law. So that's a lot of wording just to mean that like the local government, the Erie County government, to take a real world example, can't just say, okay, all the restaurants can open now completely without any COVID restrictions, even if Governor Cuomo says they can't, because they haven't been granted that power by the state. That's out of their scope of authority. And I think Professor Gardner did those little charts and like the stepping stools down, but it's, part of federalism, which we're coming into next, which most basically is a system of government in which power is divided by a constitution into different levels. And then I've just provided some of the levels, which would be federal, state, county, city, etc. And then each of those parts of the government have the federal has the biggest scope of authority, and then the state, county, city would go down and down. And so can only govern itself within its own authority granted to it by the Constitution in our federalist democracy, which some of the benefits of federalism we discussed is that it's slightly more, well, not slightly, it's more efficient because the federal government isn't, for example, talking about what traffic laws will be like in the town of Amherst, which would probably be a waste of their time, and nothing would ever get done, even more than it does now. So then moving on to bureaucracy, which is just simply a large complex organization in which employees have specific job responsibilities and work within a hierarchy of authority. So bureaucracies exist in our government to organize what needs to be done and to get those things done. There's a lot of complaints about bureaucracy, but sometimes the slow turning mechanisms of it are actually beneficial. For example, when you don't want something to get through. And then finally, just make sure that you're able to read a statute, be able to actively read it and understand it, determine the purpose, and decide if it's an efficient way to actually get the purpose that it's proposing done. Also remember not to define the purpose of statute tautologically. I know that sometimes that can be difficult. So I'm going to stop sharing now so I can see your guys' names at least. Was there something in the chat? Short answer. What's the difference between short answer and short essay? That's a great question. So the short answer questions are honestly, they're just a lot shorter. That's an awful answer, but they're gonna require from you like 1 to 2 sentences, whereas like just by the scope of the question, the essays are going to require a lot more from you in order to accurately answer it. So the short answer question, yeah, would just, you can answer it in 1 to 2 sentences, I would say, at most 4 sentences. And I wouldn't push yourself beyond that, because then you might start saying things that are not actually relevant, and you can easily probably spend too much time on short answer questions trying to answer them more than you need to. So yeah, I would just confine yourself to a couple sentences there, if you can. If you have the time to and you want to write more, go ahead. But yeah, just essentially they're just a lot shorter. How long should the short essay be? There is not a word minimum. I have seen Professor Gardner give some of the shortest answers the highest grades. That's not to say that like he won't give a long answer a high grade. It's just like the most important point, a part of the short essay, is to get your point across as clearly and concisely as possible. So if you can do that in 2 paragraphs and it's not that many words, it's like 200 words, that's fine. Don't push yourself further than that if you feel like you've answered the question to the best of your ability and it's concise and it's short, not short, but it's concise, and you've made your point as clear as possible. Again, like he said, make sure to grab that low-hanging fruit, because I think some of it is going to be a little obvious to you, like with the discussions we've talked about. And yeah, there's no word minimum. Just make sure you fully answer the question. And I think just by virtue of fully answering the question, it will be probably 1 to 2 paragraphs, if not a little bit more. Okay, so from Jimmy, is there more than one answer per question, or is he looking for something specific? Okay, so without getting, I don't want to get anywhere near the exam questions, but I would say for the short answer questions, it's going to be pretty clear that there's one answer. If you word it differently, it's not going to be like a huge deal, I don't think. But yeah, he's looking for one answer in the short answer questions. In the essay questions, just by virtue of being an essay, they're going to be a broader scope. So I guess if you interpret it differently, no one's answer is going to look the same, or it shouldn't. So I don't think it's going to be like, oh, you didn't mention, at least for the essay questions, oh, you didn't mention this specific term, that's a 0. You know what I mean? So yes and no. I guess for the short answer questions, I would say that there should be a pretty clear answer. Okay, so from Julia, do our answers in our essay questions include our own viewpoints at all, or is it all discussing people's ideas and concepts? Ugh. I don't know if I can answer that. I would say that like you can make I statements. It shouldn't be a lot about your feelings. But I mean, to write the question, you'll have to interpret it in your own way. I guess neither and both. I can't insert more than that. I'm sorry. Does anyone else have a question? Want to clarify anything we talked about, or if you had a question on your quizzes or even on the short papers, if you really want to talk about that. Okay. Oh, where will this review be posted? Sure. So I will send a link to this recording to everyone in the session, just so that we can have it. I won't post it to every, like, to UB Learns, because I'm not sure that every TA wants a review session, because like I'm not sure what they're doing. But I will send a link to this recorded session to everyone in our section. And then I will also send, oh, sure. I'll get 1 second. And then I will send a link to tomorrow's 9 a.m. session in another email. I'm sorry, try not to send you guys too many emails, but there will be 2 emails coming. So one with the link to this recorded session, and then one to tomorrow's 9 a.m. office hours with any like questions that have come up since then, or just if you want to talk about whatever you want. Okay, so Ian, go ahead with your question. Hi.
Oh, super. So I was wondering about this question that the professor mentioned today as well about judicial review. So, like, I'm just a little confused to the concept of, so the judicial review can visit constitutional matters, right? But then
Yeah.
more so in the context of that question, it couldn't visit statutes, right? So I'm just like, can you explain more about this? Because I personally thought that statutes are also subject to judicial review, which I find now to be wrong. So can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So this was the most recent quiz, so quiz 5.
Yeah, I believe so. I
Okay,
think so.
let me just pull up the actual question, because
Or actually, it might have been the quiz before the last one, because
okay,
I think I got the question wrong on that one.
let's look. Let's look here, just 1 second. Okay. So let's see. This person got it right, so I don't wanna, hold on one second. Okay, so in that question, okay, this is, in that question, the correct answer is a judicial ruling interpreting a constitution. The reason for that is, and I see the confusion because often there are court cases that bring up questions about the Constitution, but they're never interpreting the statute. They're interpreting the Constitution itself and how it relates to that statute. So they're always interpreting the Constitution. So for example, let's say a statute is made saying you can't have automatic, private citizens can't own automatic guns. Then and it's brought to the Supreme Court to question its constitutionality. You're not questioning whether the statute itself is good or not. You're questioning whether it applies to the Constitution.
Okay, I see. Got it. Thank you so much. That really
No
clarifies.
problem. And then there was a question from Nina. What was your question?
I had a question about the most recent quiz. Maybe I was just like looking in the wrong spot, but it was about the reading where he was comparing the burglary tools to something, and then the question was like, what makes the most sense or something?
Okay, let me just pull up the question so I can actually make sure I'm giving you the right information here. Okay. Which of the following is most similar to the law's criminalization of possession of burglars' tools as described by Frederick? Okay, so the reason the correct choice is a law criminalizing driving without a license is that you're not criminalizing the act itself, right? If you criminalize the possession of burglars' tools, you're saying you don't even have to commit a burglary to have committed a crime. Even owning the tools that give you the opportunity or make it seem like you might be planning to commit a burglary can be seen as a crime. And then a law criminalizing driving without a license is like, it's not, driving without a license itself is not like inherently dangerous or criminal behavior, but it can lead to dangerous and criminal behavior. Like if you get in an accident and you are not registered, that's a whole deal. The reason why it's not any of the other options, like for example, a law criminalizing murder, is that like murder, it's already done. The crime, the harm has been committed, whereas like the burglar's tools are something that just gives you the opportunity to commit a crime rather than having actually done so. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but like, isn't driving without a license a crime in itself?
Yeah, I would have to look at the other, you know what? I will ask Professor Gardner for further clarification about this and then get back to you. If anyone else has questions about this, I can send it in like a big email. But I can't see like all the choices, so I can't go through why this is the best. Oh wait, you know what? I can. What am I saying? 1 second. Where am I? Okay. So this one's quiz 5. Okay, so let's see. So this is saying what is most similar to the law's criminalization of possession of burglars' tools. So what's most similar, this isn't necessarily a great answer, a law criminalizing a driving without a license, but the other ones are all examples of crimes that have already been committed. Like a law criminalizing murder criminalizes the act of actually killing a person. A law criminalizing defrauding the elderly actually criminalizes the act of conning the elderly. Law criminalizing theft actually criminalizes theft, versus like a law criminalizing driving without a license is the closest to all the other crimes. Also have a violent impact on someone else, whereas driving without a license probably mostly hurts you, because you're gonna get in, just like you're gonna have to pay a huge fine. I hope, does that make sense? It's not a great answer, but it's the best answer, and I think that's why he used the word most similar.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes more sense.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
No problem. Okay, Jimmy, just to answer that further, thank you, Nina, for telling him that. That 2030 is the latest, that the deadline. Professor Gardner gave us TAs to grade papers, but I am almost done with mine. So the way I will put your grades up is that I will put it up in the gradebook on UB and then I will email you a Word document with my comments and like comments about why you got the grade I assigned you. And that probably will happen closer to like Monday next week than Friday, just so you know. And does anyone else have a question? Okay, if no one else has questions, I will
Wait, I have.
oh, go ahead.
The part that we just recently did it is called origin. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like the original.
Originalism?
Originalism. Yes.
Yeah.
What is? I don't understand what that's about.
Like just the concept of judicial originalism.
The concept. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So. Okay. The concept of originalism is just, like the professor said, a way for judges to situate themselves in their rulings about the Constitution. So a judge who is an originalist would say, I will take all my biases out, I will take all my agendas out, I will take all my political wishes out, and it will focus only on what I think the founders meant when they created this part of the Constitution that I am interpreting. And that's seen as like sort of the purest form. So then we would also call originalists strict interpreters of the Constitution. Like more liberal interpretations might say, oh, well, you know, a well-armed militia is not what people are talking about when we're talking about gun control, but an originalist or a strict analyzer of the Constitution would say, no, they said right to bear arms. I don't care if they said militia afterwards, they said it. It's right there. I see it. So then Professor Gardner also brought up that like this is one of the critiques, is that it's a veiled attempt to just get conservative agendas passed, because it always ends up with a conservative leaning. And that also it's kind of impossible to take, it is impossible for humans to psychologically take away their implicit biases and like take themselves into the position of 1789. We can't do that. We can't actually know what the founders were thinking. Also, I would say a good criticism of originalism is that the founders themselves did not agree with each other on a lot of the Constitution. There was tons and tons of fighting, and what we got from it was a compromise that no one was entirely happy with. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. So the originalists you're going to see are like, for example, the person that's on that's trying to get confirmed right now, which is Amy Coney Barrett. I believe Antonin Scalia was an originalist, although he was pretty clear about his conservative leaning, so I'd have to look into that more. But yeah, overall, it's just trying to strictly adhere to the Constitution. Does that make sense?
I'm a little so confused. So like, it's basically they're just trying to wait. I don't really get. I still don't understand the main concept of it.
So yeah, so the main concept is just that the judges are trying to put themselves in the shoes of the founders and the original concept of the Constitution. Like they're just trying to be as close to what the founders would have said about this as they can be in the modern era. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
yes, that makes sense. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
great. Okay, so then to answer Jimmy and Ian's questions kind of together, do you think the short paper was along the lines of what you guys were looking for? Obviously, you can't comment on the individual grades, but overall, did we do a good job with the short papers? I would say overall, yeah, this section did a pretty good job with their short papers. I would say most of the grades are in the solid B range. Looks pretty much like a normal bell curve with, you know, few on either end here. But yeah, most of you guys did a really good job. And overall, I would say I'm very happy with them. And then also remember, if you don't like your grade, do not despair. You can take the comments and corrections I've made on your paper, you can incorporate them, and you can resubmit it. And this will never harm your grade. If for some reason you did a worse job than you did the first time, you'll keep with the original higher grade, and very likely you will get a higher grade if you took the criticism of your paper to heart and really made changes to it. Also, if anyone's having trouble, I can't recommend highly enough the Writing Center on campus, and also feel free to come to office hours. Okay, and then Julia says, I don't understand the concept of utilitarianism. Is it closely related to positivism? I would say yes, it's related to positivism. Natural law, so again, it's the rejection of natural law theory. It's kind of the antithesis to Blackstone's theory of natural law. Blackstone's theory is that, you know, humans are naturally imbued with some moral baseline things that we all know it's wrong to kill someone or to steal from someone, and that those things that are embedded in us from birth are from God. Whereas utilitarianists say humans make laws and humans are fallible, and I guess it's very similar to positivism, and humans make laws. And so what we should aim for is to make laws so that the greatest number of people get the greatest good that we can provide for them. And I think this is also a philosophical theory, utilitarianism, that the moral action is always the one that provides the greatest good to the greatest number of people. But that is it at its base roots, is that the concept is, what is this law going to give the greatest good to the greatest number? So then, like, you know, you can argue this with segregation laws. You know, this is targeting one person to give them ill instead of good. I don't know, actually that might not be a great example. I'll try and think of a better one, but does that make any more sense? Okay, great. Does anyone else have questions on any of the concepts on the exam? I would say, again, like, don't worry too much about the exam. I know it's very stressful, but try and keep calm and just answer the questions to the best of your ability, and I'm sure you guys will do fine. You know, the quiz grades I've been pretty happy with the quiz grades overall in this section. You guys are taking your quizzes and you're getting the majority of the questions right, so that's great. And feel free to email me if you think of a question. I also can meet with you at another time. If my office hours tomorrow doesn't work with you, just email me and we can meet. Does anyone else have a question?
I have like one last question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Basically today and tomorrow I'm gonna be studying. Should I be like really like studying the readings, or do you think like if I just like go through the lectures and like briefly like go through readings, you think I should be fine?
Yeah, I would say the second option would be better, to go through the lectures and pull out the key concepts Professor Gardner discusses, and then, you know, go through the readings like a little less thoroughly than you did the first time. Or if you took notes on the readings, going through your notes of the readings would be great.
All right, thank you.
No problem. And I don't have anywhere to run to. If you guys, you know, we're all in lockdown at my house still. But if anyone has any more questions, do not be shy to ask.
I actually have one more question. I don't know if you're actually able to answer this one or not, but
Sure.
I was wondering, do you have any idea how the test is going to be composed, in terms of, will the questions be more on the philosophical side of the material, as in, Locke and other philosophers, or will it be more of the technical stuff, like the law about this and the statutory, reading statutes and stuff like that, or will it be more like balanced?
What I will say to that, because it is, getting close to a question I can't answer there, so sorry about that, but everything that we've discussed is in fair game. So everything that we've discussed this semester is possible to be discussed in the midterm, and that includes both of what you're talking about, but I won't answer any more specifically than that.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else have a question? Again, please don't hesitate.
Sorry. For federalism is basically we just need to know that it's the division between like the national and the state governments, and then the justifications, or do we need to know like more than that? Like, is there something that I'm missing?
No, I think that's a good understanding. Again, like, I think studying federalism in this class, people sometimes start to feel like they don't actually understand it, because it is a difficult class, and the readings we do about it are complicated. But at its most basic level, federalism is very simple. It's just like I said, the division, between governments by the Constitution. Yeah, your understanding of it is perfectly good.
And what was in the quiz question? I think it was about like something about territorial within the diversity about federalism. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Let me just pull it up. I think it's in the same quiz.
That was the last quiz we said.
Is this federalism recognizes diversity in society, but it privileges only certain kinds of diversity?
Yeah, like I knew the answer, but I didn't really understand like what that meant. You know what I mean?
Sure. So federalism, because it's divided specifically in the United States, because it's divided into a national government overarching and then state governments. Making national laws in the United States is actually very difficult, because we are, as you all know, I'm sure, one of the largest countries in the world, and life here in Western New York is incredibly different from life in Nevada. And so that's what we're referring to when we say territorial diversity, that the laws that the states make are often very different from one another, because the needs of the states are incredibly different. Like California's needs are completely different from New York's needs. We're not going to have a lot of laws about setting wildfires, because we don't have a fire season, but California will. So yeah, and just that it privileges it, to use the language of the quiz, it privileges that, because it's specifically breaking down our government and its authority into places that are in different territories, like most commonly the state. And also, even if you look within the states themselves, like in New York, there was a lot of tension. I don't know if you guys are from here, but there was a lot of tension during the COVID crisis, when it was at its height in New York, that Western New York and Buffalo were not getting the supplies and the tests we needed, because everything was going to New York City. And so we wanted to be able to make county ordinances that were different here from what was going on in New York City. And now that is starting to happen as restrictions are loosening, but that was a big issue. So even within New York State, it would be difficult to make it is difficult to say, oh, this applies to everyone in the state, just because, for example, upstate New York is so different from New York City. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Okay, and then Nina asked, do you think it would be possible for you to ask Professor Gardner to open the quizzes so we can review them and study? So it was my understanding that if you go to your grade book and then click on your quiz score, it'll bring you to the quiz. Is that not, can you guys not do that? I can still see it. Do you mean the quiz, Julia?
Yeah, so like it's kind of hard. Like it took me a minute. You have to go to like, hold on, I just went back. Okay, so yeah, so you have to click on the actual quiz. Like you have to click quiz 4 and then press OK. Wait, no, I lied. You have to go to quiz 4 and then press the actual like 7, and then it shows you all your quiz answers. like
Yeah,
that.
so you click on your actual, so your score, so whatever, 5, 6, 7, and then it'll take you to the quiz. It's not obvious. UB Learns and UB sites in general are not famous for their usability. So I apologize. I know that's hard. Okay, great. I'm glad you can see that now. That's definitely a good way to study, is to go back and see what you missed in the quizzes. Any other questions? Okay, if there aren't any other questions, and feel free to interrupt me, don't feel bad. I will end the session and I will send this out to you guys so that you all can see it, and have a great day. Study hard, but remember to take a deep breath. You guys are all going to be okay. I know it's a hard semester. No problem. Thank you guys for coming, and remember, I have office hours tomorrow at 9 a.m. If you want a different appointment, just email me. I will be happy to work with you. Okay, bye guys.